Okay, guys, don't worry about it all being a bit chaotic. That's absolutely fine. That's what happens. So yeah, hello, I'm Bill. I've had narcolepsy for 30 years now. I got it when I was at school, so when I was about 12 or so, and I've lived through it through that time. And so what I wanted to do, what Nicola's asked me to do, is to just sort of just share some of the strategies that I've developed over that time. And maybe also sort of get you guys to to share any other snippets of or things that you've developed yourselves over the time that you've had narcolepsy that help you deal with it. What I got here, the good news, I guess, if you've got for the first stage and that you've got it diagnosed, so you know what it is now. Which is a good stage, because obviously when you're going through falling asleep all the time at school or at work or whatever, and you don't know what it is, then that's it's really quite stressful, and so the fact that you actually at least you know what it is, so now you're a bit more in control, and you can do something about it. The other good bit of good news, I think Dr. Redding did imply this, is that it's not going to get worse. If anything, it's going to get better. Especially the cataplexy side of things. I know a lot of people find that as they get older, then the cataplexy incidents, diminish massively. And it did for me. I used to collapse quite a lot at school, but I don't have any flops at all now, and I can drive quite happily. So that's good news, good stuff. And so, yeah, narcolepsy, it's a spectrum disorder, or I call it a disorder, condition, whatever. But so you can probably be anything on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of your narcolepsy. I think I'm probably about halfway. I'm probably about a 5, and so I tend to fall asleep about 5 or 6 times a day, probably on average. But I can do it with micro naps. So I only need to sleep for 5 minutes and I wake up and I'm fine. Other people find it a lot more difficult to wake up. So everyone's different. That's what I'm trying to say, is that something that might work for one person won't work for another person, and so a lot of it is all about trial and error. And so if you think, oh, I was awake in that class, what did I do differently? And it might be, oh, I didn't have any potatoes for my lunch, or it was straight after PE, so I'd had a lot of exercise, or I took a pill. All these little things that might be the reason why you're staying awake. And so always be on the lookout. Always be on the lookout for things. Okay, so lifestyle. Right, what have I got down here? What have I got first? I've got diet. So I found that especially at lunch times, if I have carbohydrates, so things like what is carbohydrate? Potatoes, bread, pasta, it tends to knock me out. And I'll probably need to sleep for 30 minutes, 3/4 of an hour. Whereas if I have, if I don't have them, so maybe I'll just have a lump of chicken with some lettuce or something instead, then I don't need to sleep for nearly as long after I've eaten. And so again, maybe just keep an eye out on that. And the same kind of thing happens with breakfast. Quite often, if I have loads of toast for breakfast, then I'm out for half an hour again. Whereas if I have an egg, then I'm not. And so you quite often find that things that you eat really can have quite a big impact on on how you sleep. And I know that there's someone who used to say that whenever they were feeling dozy, they used to eat an apple, and that woke them up. But there's lots of different things that might that might impact. And I think there's quite a lot of people who say that eating carbohydrates tends to really have a big impact. And I guess, do you also tend to get sweet cravings big time, especially in the evenings? Yeah? Don't worry, you're not weird. That happens. And I'm not quite sure how to say to deal with that, except for ask your parents to hide the biscuits. And because you've got all the healthy food, you're just not interested. You say, well, there's an apple there, and no, I'm not interested. I want the cheese sandwich. I want the chocolate biscuits. And I guess the only strategy I've developed around that is quite often that's a signal that I need to sleep. And so rather than eat, I'll try and go and sleep. And I'll say, well, I'll have a kip first, and then if I'm still hungry, then I'll have something to eat. And so that's one way to try and control it. Okay. All right. What have we got next? Timed naps. I'm a real biggie on this one, and this is, for me, this is the thing that really had a massive impact. Was I find I only need to actually let myself fall asleep, and once I've physically actually fallen asleep for a minute or 2 minutes, I wake up and it'll be like the fog's cleared, and I'm absolutely fine and I can operate again. Now I know that doesn't work with everybody. I know some people need longer, and also other people, it takes them longer to actually wake up once they've fallen asleep. But for some people that works, and the time might vary, and it might vary between, after you've eaten it might be half an hour. If you haven't eaten it might be shorter. But for me, that worked fantastically, and I haven't actually got it on now, but I normally have a stopwatch which has got a lap counter on, which is automatically set for 5 minutes, and all I have to do is press 2 buttons and it starts counting down from 5 minutes, and every 5 minutes it bleeps for 10 seconds, and so it's really to try and help me wake up, so I can just put my head down. 5 minutes later it'll bleep, and quite often I'll wake up, stand up, have a little walk around, sit down, and then carry on. Happy days. Other times it might take 2 or 3 times before that happens, and so all I'm saying is have a little bit of trial and error. So maybe ask your friends or your parents or your brother and sister or whatever. Say, well, I'm going to have a nap. Can you wake me up after 10 minutes or 5 minutes or quarter of an hour, and have a little bit of trial and error and see if it works. Because if it does, then it's really useful, and you feel then that you're far more in control rather than the narcolepsy controlling you. I'm going to say this again this afternoon, but you're in control of a narcolepsy all of a sudden, and it really that's really really helpful. Okay, but also when you're having your little snoozes, do you guys tend to sit at the front of your class with the teachers, or not? Do the teachers know that you've got the narcolepsy? Are they asked to deal? And where do you tend to sit? Anywhere, or yeah? Okay, no, I know a lot of people who would sit at the front of a class just so the teacher could see them, but I know I always just prefer sitting at the back, because you always you get a bit sort of self-conscious, and you're a bit worried about everyone sort of seeing your head nodding or your head on the desk and so on, and you feel quite embarrassed about it. So I found it's better being at the back, because then that people aren't going to see you, and okay, the teacher can see, but you haven't got quite so much worry about everyone else seeing you, and so that one was quite useful. But the other thing is where. Do you guys do you sleep in class, or do you have a nap room, or what? You have a medical room? Yeah? And so I guess my inclination would be to say maybe try and sleep somewhere a bit less comfortable, because you're more inclined to wake up a bit more quickly. If you go and sleep in a bed, then I guess quite often you do sleep for quite a long time.
No, I have it at break time, just for the duration of break.
Oh, right.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then there's a bell for the whole school that wakes me up.
Oh, so does that really work well? Yeah. Okay. Well, sometimes a bed might be okay, but I'm saying other times. Yes. Sorry.
I'm at college and I've got my library room, and it's got a seat and then big poofy thing if I need to have a rest.
And do you time it a bit like? So I don't know your name. You're a bit like. Do you sort of time? Have it at specific times, or do you just sort of? But do you do that during lectures and so on?
Obviously, because at college you've got times where you've got an hour break, or you've not got anything for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So when I've got that time, if I need to, then that's when I'll use it.
Yeah, but I guess what happens though if you find yourself falling asleep during one of the classes or during a lecture?
If I felt like I don't fall asleep, then I'll go there. There's watches on it. Let her know, and then she'll do me whenever.
Yeah. So that works sometimes. Yeah, but I know I'd find quite often if I was trying to walk to somewhere to go and have a snooze, then I'd almost be falling asleep as I was walking, and especially if I was trying to set an alarm, I wouldn't be able to do that, and so I'd end up crashing somewhere, and then I'd be out for half an hour because I hadn't been able to ask somebody to wake me up because I was half asleep already. So I found that actually just putting my head down on my desk in the class was the one that worked for me, and then ask one of my sort of friends to stick a pencil in my ear after 5 minutes or whatever, or give me a nudge, which worked most of the time. There was one time I woke up and hit somebody, but apart from that, it worked quite well. But again, different things work for different people, and but I was saying, so if you do have somewhere to fall asleep, maybe make it somewhere that's a little bit uncomfortable, because then you don't go into too deep a sleep and you're more likely to wake up a bit more quickly. Okay, what have I got next? Yeah, don't fight it. It's just something else I'll be talking about later this afternoon. But I guess when you're in a class, you start to feel a little bit dozy. A lot of the time you're sitting there and you start clenching your fists and you're grabbing a hold of your knees and you go, "No, I'm fine. I can fight this. It's all right. And it just prolongs it, and you end up spending 10, 15, 20 minutes when you're in that twilight zone and nothing's going in, and you're starting to say silly things, and you're starting to look really stupid, and then eventually you still fall asleep. And so again, what I say is, don't fight it. If you feel a snooze coming, then just let it happen. Because the quicker you can let yourself fall asleep, the quicker you can wake up, and then the quicker you can get back into the swing of things. And so, yeah, sort of try not to get too wound up when it's starting to happen. Just let it happen. The other one which I've got down here, which was a bit of which I've already touched on, was just like maybe have a bit of a sort of a chat with your parents or whatever at the end of each day, and it might be, well, what lessons did I fall asleep in, and which ones was I awake in, and is there something that I've done differently, and that maybe that's a reason why. Because you'll find over time, I mean, like I said, it's a spectrum disorder, and so everyone reacts differently, and there's different things that'll send people to sleep, and there's different things that'll keep people awake, and different strategies work for some people and don't work for others, and quite a lot of the time you'll find them out by mistake, or you'll and so just always be on the lookout, really. So, and it might be worth, like say, just having a chat with someone at the end of each day, and then you can, if something has happened a bit differently, then it might be, be able to latch onto that. So it might be, I had kiwi for the lunch, and wow, I was wide awake for an hour afterwards, or or another one is I'll go into that one in a minute. Yeah, okay. So always should be on the lookout for for little bits and pieces, because then over time, gradually, you sort of build up your little armory of methods of ways of dealing with it. It's those little. So I like my rugby, and I remember Clive Woodward was coaching England team, and he was like, he got them to the best team in the world. A lot of it was by this little 1% improvement here and a 1% improvement there. And I look at it the same way with narcolepsy. If you can just make these tiny little improvements here and there, then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're sort of 10, 15, 20% improvement, and everything's looking a bit more manageable. I think, yeah, so on that sort of why is today a good day, I think, like I say, trial and error, especially with the medication as well. I mean, I know probably, I don't know if some of you are trying to get onto Xyrem, but it might be in the meantime you need to take some other drugs, and different drugs work for different people again. I mean, a lot of people say are on modafinil, and they find that it sort of helps their general alertness, but they can't say, if I take a pill here, I'm going to be awake here. Whereas other pills, other medication with different people, then that's the case. I mean, for me, when I was at school, I took the Dexedrine, which is the amphetamines, and with those, I knew if I took a pill at 9 o'clock, by 9:30, I would be, I'd be wide awake, and that would last for an hour, and then I'd start to go. And so it meant that I could time, the lessons and when I took the pills really quite accurately. So I knew if I needed to be awake for a double lesson, then I'd need to take half a pill, maybe an hour beforehand, and then another half just as the lesson was starting. Or the same thing, obviously, with exams. So you can really time things really well. And so again, it might be that on your prescription, they're I'll take one pill at 10 and one pill at 12, but don't be afraid to sort of try different timings and so on. I mean, you obviously need to be careful because these are drugs and so on. But I found that trying taking them at different times, and also taking different drugs, worked for me. I also take I take Ritalin mainly now, and that works really well in terms of I can take it and I know I'm going to be awake for an hour, and then I can take another one or whatever, and it doesn't mess up my nighttime sleep. But after a while I start getting a tolerance to it, and so I need to have a holiday, and so I'll wean myself off it, and then maybe go nuclear for a bit and go back on the speed, take Dexedrine or take modafinil for a couple of weeks, just to sort of give your body a holiday. So I guess it's try out different drugs essentially, and don't be afraid to go to a doctor, even if one is seems to be working quite well. Don't be afraid to try a few other different ones out, and I say sort of tinker around with the timings. Another thing that someone recommended to me was take your Ritalin before you eat, because that really has a big effect. And all of a sudden my sleep when after I ate went down from like 3/4 an hour to 15 minutes or so, just because of that one little thing, and all of a sudden that saved me half an hour every single day. So just by tinkering around at the edges, you find that you can make the medication work for you a lot more effectively. Is there anything else on the medication side? Take half pills rather than whole ones, maybe. I do that all the time. No, I don't think so. Okay, what else have I got on here? Yeah, I think so. I think it's like, in order to get prescribed in the first instance, I'd have to go to a specialist. But now it's like, over the years I've been been prescribed the Dexedrine, the Ritalin, and the modafinil, and so essentially I can go to and you need a review with a GP once every 3 months, and I'll go and they'll say, well, you know far more about this than we do. What do you want us to prescribe now, really? And so they are accommodating, and I mean, obviously, you have to do it responsibly, and they're not sweet, but you can sort of really use them, I think, quite effective. You don't have to take them all at the same time, every single day and so on. I think it depends on what demands are. And I mean, with things like Ritalin, and I don't know how many of you are on Xyrem, or are you on Ritalin or modafinil Tranquilin. I haven't heard of that one. Is that like a stimulant, is it? I'm not sure if that's Ritalin. I'm not sure if that's another name for the Ritalin. Might be. Yeah. Are you? What do you take? You're not? Oh, right. Oh, it's you. What does he take? Modafinil. That's another name for Ritalin, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess just try. Yeah. Play around with them a little bit. So you take. And I guess, do you get mood swings with Ritalin? So do you get really quite sometimes? Yeah.
But I am noticing that sometimes my automatic emotional reactions are a bit more aggressive.
Yeah.
I call them Ritalin thoughts.
Do you get that? You take Ritalin as well, don't you? Methylphenidate. Do you find sometimes you get really small little things will make you go yeah that's the Ritalin. And sometimes it might be in the evenings, when the effect's wearing off, or at the weekends if you're taking less. And so I mean, a lot of the time you have to almost just apologise. I find myself apologising as I'm sorry, I'm shouting at you and I can't stop myself. And you really have to, but because that you're being unreasonable, but it's boiling. And so, but I mean, again, for me, that's a sign that I need to wean myself off it for a bit, and maybe sort of switch onto another drug, onto something else for a while, just to let my body sort of get over it. But I say wean myself off it because the other bad thing I find with Ritalin is that if you don't take it for 2 or 3 days, you feel awful. You feel really depressed, and just don't want to do anything. And so it might be, if you don't take any over the weekend, just to give your body a bit of a rest, and you wake up Monday morning and you're just like, oh. and I find it so hard to go to work, and I'll just be sitting there at a desk just like, oh, don't want to do anything. And until I've taken a couple of pills, and I'm almost sitting and waiting for the pill to kick in, and you think, oh, right, I can work now. And I think, no, that's not right. No, I think I need to have a break now, and I need to to come to maybe switch on to something else. So, yeah.
With modafinil, some people get constipation.
Really? Oh, crikey. Yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of different effects that there can be, and so I guess it's quite useful in a way to have 2 or 3 different ones that you can chop and change between. But obviously, I'm not saying you have to do it under medical supervision and all the rest of it. But it's worth it. Is there anything else on that front? I don't think. Has anyone's got any other hints or tips that they found on the pill front? No?
I found that taking mine at the same time every day has really worked for me.
Yeah?
Because I got into like a sleep routine, and if I take all 3 meds at a certain time each day, not necessarily together, Ritalin first, and then Venlafaxine after breakfast, and melatonin at like 10 o'clock at night every day. Then I know when I'm going to have a good sleep. So
Yeah.
I can plan ahead. So that's worked well for me. Taking it ad hoc, I was just I didn't know when I was going to be awake.
Yeah.
And I couldn't plan social stuff.
Well, if I'm with Ritalin, I can, but with modafinil, I couldn't. So, and I know, so it depends on what you're doing each day. Sort of weekends, for instance, it might be take it at the same time, and when you're going to be awake and when you're going to be asleep. But if you're at school or if you're working, then that there are certain times of day when I really need to be awake at this time, and so that's what I'm going to focus on. And so it might be then you need to start sort of tinkering. Or, if you've got PE or something, it's like, well, I don't need to take a pill for that. So, I don't need to take a pill. If that's after lunch, then, I don't need to take a pill until, halfway through PE so that I'm awake in the lesson after it. So it's, on almost on a day-by-day basis, you might sort of need to tinker around and take things different, and maybe different amounts as well. Because there'll be some days when you've got, double English or something, which is the most boring one, and you almost... or you might have lots of lessons, and and so you might need to take maybe half a pill more on a Monday than you do on a Tuesday, because on a Tuesday you've got more active lessons, or they're more spaced out. Okay. Has anyone else got any little hints or tips or things that they found that have been useful, to help them at school? Most of you have sleep rooms. What's that of it? Scheduled sleeps.
I have one at 11 and one at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Really? Oh, that sounds good. And so, how long? You say about half an hour, 20 minutes, something like that.
By my consultant, I've been told not to have sleeps longer than half an hour, otherwise I'd be in deep sleep and it'd be harder to wake up, and then I'd wake up.
Yeah. Hey?
A bit grumpy.
Yeah. You're grumpy when you wake up, or when your parents wake you up, or yeah. And does everyone else find that? Yeah. Yeah. I find only about 5 seconds, but I'm really. Yeah. Yeah, and I think also, trying not to be... It's quite difficult trying to be polite to people when they tell you need a kip. It's quite, you can... No, I do not need a sleep. Leave me alone. I'm fine. And so it is difficult, and I still find that difficult a lot of the time. I have to really... Well, I do quite often still lash out verbally and say, no, I'm fine, I'm all right. And then 5 minutes later, I'm gone. So I guess from the, siblings, brothers, sisters, parents, partners, whatever, just, be a bit thick-skinned, because they don't mean it. We don't mean it really, honest. And that's the other one I've got. And I'm sort of preempting what I'm going to say this afternoon a little bit, but the other one I've got down here is attitude. And I guess it's sort of like... the more that you all this little tinkering at the edges and the things that that you can do to control it over time make you feel more confident and make you feel better about the narcolepsy, and makes you feel more and more in control. And so rather than getting upset about the things that you can't do or that you're having trouble doing because of your narcolepsy, instead you feel good about the things that you've managed to do despite your narcolepsy. And so if you can, so I'm going to preempt what I'm going to say this afternoon completely. I'm going to say almost like embrace it. It's part of who you are, and so if you can get used to that and get that sort of approach, then it becomes a lot easier to deal with. Does that make sense? Or I'm not really getting that way across brilliantly. I don't know, but I find that then if you're sort of a bit more comfortable with it, then also if when say if somebody wakes you up, or if somebody says to you, "Oh, did you have a late night last night?" because they can see you starting to drop off, then you're not so. Originally, I used to be really aggressive and sort of quite upset about it, whereas now I'm sort of just more I've got this narcolepsy thing. I fall asleep occasionally. And then quite often people are, "Oh, really?" And then they'll want to, then they'll want to actually interact and ask you and talk to you about it and so on. Whereas if you're really aggressive, then they'll just cross the street to avoid you. Yeah, and I don't want to say too much on that because that's what I'm going to be waffling on about this afternoon later on. But and so they're really the main things I was going to say. Really was I think I found narcolepsy is a pain, but it's not going to kill you. It's not going to get worse. Don't be afraid to talk about it. I've also got written down here, you're not weird. I didn't actually talk much about that one, but I guess coming along to something like this is good because it means that you can, share experiences with other people. And so these weird dreams that you've been having, or this automatic behaviour, or the collapses, all these little side effects, the sleep paralysis, all of a sudden you realise that there's other people who are having exactly the same issues, and that can be really helpful. And like I said, to say, be proud of the things that you've achieved despite your narcolepsy, rather than getting upset about the things that you haven't managed to do because of it. And if you approach it that way, then you'll be fine, and it'll be happy. I'm sorry. So has anyone else got anything else they want to add or share? No? Okay, all right. Well, that's quite rapid then. Well, thanks for your time, and like I say, just keep talking. That's the main thing of this weekend. Talk and compare notes and compare experiences and pick up hints and tips. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thanks.